What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to give you my 2023 SEC football tier rankings heading into the 2023 college football season. Basically, how this video is going to work, we're going to give you some different tiers here for these rankings. They're kind of similar to power rankings from, each and every single Power 5 team, but we're going to do the conferences. We're going to do the conferences here for these tier rankings. We're going to give you 4 different tiers and, based off, where these teams were from last year and obviously heading into this season. And, these are teams that, we're going to, the first tier that you're going to see are definitely going to be their top contenders in the SEC. And then the second tier will feature dark horse contenders. And then the third tier will feature, decent teams, but they'll probably not live up to those expectations. And then, of course, the fourth tier is probably the worst one. They're probably the worst, in their conference anyway. But, this is how it's going to work. We're going to just give you, 4 different tiers, and, we'll do the same thing with the other conferences. Starting today, we're doing the SEC. Tomorrow, we'll do the ACC. Big Ten will be on Friday, and then we'll do the Saturday, we'll do the Big 12, and then the Pac-12 on Sunday to end these tier rankings out. But we're going to start with the SEC here. Let's just jump right into it here with my SEC tier rankings. And again, these are just going to be based off, what hype I have for them coming into this season. We'll start with tier number 1. We're going to start with these 3 teams. I think these are your top contenders. We got Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Let's start off with Alabama. Alabama coming off a really up and down season last year, but you really can't bet against Alabama. They still belong in tier number 1 for me. This is a team that, I think will still be talented enough, to compete in the SEC. I don't really expect them to take a step back here after a really tough year from last year. They're going to have talent. They do have 5-star talent on both sides of the ball. Yes, they do lose Bryce Young and Will Anderson, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball. But let's face it, it's Alabama. Alabama's going to be really talented. Same thing with Georgia here. They're both kind of similar teams. They're going to have 5-star talented guys. And Georgia, I don't think they're going to take a step back here. They definitely belong in this tier 1 conversation. And then they got LSU here. People are saying that LSU probably could be in tier number 2, but based off of where this team did last year and based off of, what they have coming back this year, I think LSU is going to be a really good team this year. I kind of expect them to be a top contender in the SEC. I don't really expect them, to be a tier number 2 team. I kind of expect them to be an SEC championship contender as well. And LSU really surprised me a lot last year. That's why they ended up here at number 1 on the tier list. And, that's how it ended up here with all 3 of these teams. These are 3 very dangerous teams. And I think these are your top, tier teams here in tier number 1. Let's go now to tier number 2. In tier number 2, it's a pretty packed one. You got Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Kentucky, and South Carolina. I think all of these teams are your tier number 2 teams. Tennessee has the high-powered offense. They're going to have the talent on both sides of the not both sides of the ball, but especially on the offensive side of the ball. We know they lose Hendon Hooker and, really good wide receivers, but this Tennessee team, I'm not too concerned about their offense. I'm really concerned about the defense, but I think Tennessee, is not quite there yet to that tier number 1 category. Maybe by the time, maybe next year they could probably be up there, but as of right now, they are definitely in that tier number 2 conversation. And you got Ole Miss here. They're talented on the offensive side of the ball. They could be a contender in the SEC. You got Texas A&M here. I know they had a really tough year last year, a 5-7 season, but I think this team is going to turn it around, but I don't think they'll really challenge Alabama or, anybody else in the SEC West, like, for example, LSU as well. But I think Texas A&M is definitely in that tier number 2 conversation. They're definitely a dark horse contender in the SEC West. You got Arkansas here, another team that I kind of expect to be decent this year. They probably should be at tier number 3, but I think based off of where they were from last year, I got to put this team at tier number 2. Kentucky comes in here at tier number 2 as well. I don't know what Kentucky's going to look like this year, but I know they're going to still, in fact, have a really good team to where they're like a dark horse contender in the SEC East. And then you got South Carolina here, a team that's starting to turn things around a little bit. They're heading in the right direction as a program. Shane Beamer's really turned this program around. If South Carolina can recruit well and get, both sides going, this is a really dangerous South Carolina team in the future. Spencer Rattler coming back as well is huge for them, and that's how they ended up here at tier number 2. They do have the toughest schedule in the country, but I think these are all your tier number 2 teams. Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Kentucky, and South Carolina. These are all your dark horse contenders in the SEC. Let's now go to tier number 3. And these are going to be the decent teams this year. You got Florida, Missouri, Mississippi State, and Auburn. I think all these 4 teams that you're seeing in tier number 3 will be decent teams. Maybe average teams as well, but they're not quite there as a dark horse contender in the SEC. Florida was really close to me putting in the tier number 2 category, but based off from this team was from last year, and also I just don't know how Florida's going to be this season. We don't know how good this team will be. We don't know how good they're going to be with Billy Napier's second season. Missouri kind of the same way, but they do have a lot of production coming back, but the schedule kind of gets to them, and that's how they ended up here in tier number 3. And then Mississippi State's going to have a new head coach as well, but I think they'll still be really good on the offensive side of the ball. Will Rogers is a veteran, experienced quarterback. He can throw the football downfield pretty well. And Auburn's kind of in a rebuild mode. I would probably put them in tier number 4, but I don't think they're the worst team in the SEC, to be honest. I don't think anybody was really worse last year in the SEC besides Vanderbilt, but I think I think Auburn definitely is in a rebuild mode, but I think they're still quite decent enough to compete in the SEC. So all 4 of these teams are your tier number 3 teams. Florida, Missouri, Mississippi State, and Auburn. Again, we don't know what Florida's going to look like. Missouri kind of the same way, Mississippi State, but Auburn's kind of in a rebuild mode. So those are your 4 teams in tier number 3. And then tier number 4, it's Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's the only team here in tier number 4, and that was the only SEC team we had left. I don't think Vanderbilt's really a bad team this year. I don't really expect them to be that terrible this season. I think I at least see them winning about 1 or 2 games in the SEC, maybe 3. I mean, this team could really shock, some people, maybe go 6-6 after a 5-7 season last year, but as of right now, Vanderbilt's definitely still one of the worst teams in the SEC. They have been, now the last few years. They just haven't been able to compete with those top teams in the SEC. And, it's been a while, but, they had a couple wins last year in the SEC against Kentucky and Florida. Maybe they beat those teams again, but they do have to play both of them. They get Kentucky at home, but they do have to play Florida on the road this year. But definitely Vanderbilt's going to be a 4-tier team for me this season. I kind of don't expect them, to win 6 games, but it's really possible they can. It's really possible that they can. I'm not saying Vanderbilt's going to be terrible this year. I think they'll at least get a win in the SEC and maybe a couple wins. But, if Vanderbilt has a really good season this year, they're definitely in that decent conversation next year in tier number 3. But those are my SEC football tier rankings. This is a short video, but let me guys know what you think about these SEC tier rankings. Who do you think expects to be the top contender, and also some decent team, or also a dark horse contender in the SEC, and who do you think will be worse in 2023? Let me know down in the comments below, and stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.